Good morning, everybody. Good morning, good morning. Do I have everyone's attention here? Good morning. Well, I sort of have your attention. It's great to see you guys this morning. It's such a beautiful day outside. It's good to have you all here. It's 11/11 celebration. I don't know if you were here last week. The room was packed. Looks like we're having a course correction today, a market correction or something. But we also have a lot of camping and stuff going on out there, so we might just open up the doors because I saw folks out there in the tents. So it's good to have you here this morning. And we're starting a new series today, so I'm glad that you're here for that. If you're visiting with us for the first time, I especially want to make sure that you note it somewhere, write it on that card. Let us know that you were here. If it's your first time also, the band has CDs of their music. You're more than welcome to grab up one of those. Austin in the back or one of the guys at the booth, they have the CDs and be happy to pass along one of those with some of the music we do in here. We are glad that you're with us. I'm going to just make a couple of quick announcements on the back of your bulletin, which you can notice if you look with me. We have our group, our discussion group that's meeting on Monday, 7 to 8:30. They'll be meeting again tomorrow. Oh, yes, okay. And Doxy, there you are, Doxy. If you were here last week, you got to hear Doxy. It was wonderful. We kind of featured Doxy last week. She was amazing. Our Latvian rock star. But that was a great introduction to the tribute concert that she'll be doing next Sunday evening in the sanctuary. It always packs out. She'll have members, a lot of the members of the Fort Worth Orchestra. Oh, 6. Okay. 60 of the Civic Orchestra. So it's going to be a fun concert featuring music, and it's in honor of her late husband, Alexei Sultanov, the former Van Cliburn winner, and there's a foundation that she's created in his name, and so this will be a fundraiser for that. So you want to be here for that. It's going to be a great concert and definitely inspiring. Her story is amazingly inspiring too, so I know she'll share some of that. DeAndrea also has something to share that's going to be happening at our church in 2 weeks.
Mother's Day is an incredibly beautiful day, but it's also a very hard day for many women. And so I'm very impressed with the church here and with the staff, and they are offering a service on Thursday evening, May 11th at 7 o'clock in the chapel for all families, and especially mothers who have either lost children, who have suffered from infertility, or who's if you've had a child of any age who has died, and if Mother's Day is particularly hard for you, you're invited to come. Communion will be served. There will be prayers and a time of community and a spirit of oneness that is like none other that I've ever seen. And so the cards are in the back. The service is called Prayers for Children Lost and Longed For. And so if you would like to come, we would love to have you. If you know of someone who would benefit from this service, please share this with them, because Christmas, Easter, and Mother's Day are like the highly attended services of the church, but there also are times where a lot of those of us who are here will be hiding out somewhere else because it's very, very hard to face those days. So please share this with those that you know and love and your neighbors, and we hope if you are a part of this kind of journey, we hope that you will join us as well.
Thanks. And DeAndrea, what's the name of your nonprofit?
Memory Grows.
Thank you. I drew a blank. DeAndrea Dare is also an elder in our annual conference, an ordained United Methodist elder, and we're just so grateful that she chooses to participate in here. She's not on staff at this church. She runs tell me again. Memory Grows, and she just had a retreat for them yesterday, and just a great ministry to families who've experienced loss and the same kinds of experiences. And so we're glad to have her involved with our service here, and she'll be a part of that service in a couple of weeks as well. So let's begin our worship with some music from this with this great song.
Sometimes I lay under the moon, take me soon, 'cause I am here for a reason. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday you will all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will play. One day, one day, one day, oh, one day, one day, one day, one day, oh. It's not about win or lose, 'cause we all lose when they feed on the souls of the innocent. Blood-drenched pavement, keep on moving though the water's still raging. In this maze you could lose your way, your way. It might drive you crazy, but don't let it face you, no way, no way. Sometimes in my tears I drown, but I never let it get me down. So when negativity surrounds, I know someday it'll all turn around, because all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will play. One day, one day, one day, one day, one day, oh, one day, one day, one day, one day, one day, oh. May this all will change, treat people the same, stop with the violence, down with the hate. One day we'll all be free and proud to be under the same sun, singing songs of freedom like one day, all my life I've been waiting for, I've been praying for the people to say that we don't want to fight no more. There'll be no more wars, and our children will play. One day, one day, one day, oh, one day, one day, one day, oh, good stuff, huh?
Good morning. The welcome candle is lit. Please join me in reading the words of welcome in the bulletin. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving. It doesn't matter. Ours is not a caravan of despair. Come, even if you have broken your vows 1,000 times, come yet again.
Our scripture lesson that we'll hear in just a few moments is the words that I think and feel that this service tries to embody for our community, and that is to love God and love one another. And so with that spirit in mind, let us begin with prayer. O Holy One, come, and may your spirit be made known to us on this day through the love that we share with one another, and the way in which we look into one another's eyes as we listen to our stories and our journeys, our concerns, our questions. And may, as we leave this place, know that we may have come in alone, but we are leaving a part of something greater, a community that is finding its way in this world, and we find it together. So come, and may we become one in these moments. We pray these things in the name of the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Amen.
At this point, I'd like for you to stand and sing a Bob Marley song with us, won't you please? And if you've brought your offering, now's the perfect time to bring it to the table. I trust you know this one. Let's do it. Right here. One love, hey, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. Hear the children crying. One love. Hear the children crying. One love, hey. Thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Say it. Let's get together and feel alright. Come on. Let them all pass out the dirty remarks. There is one question I'd really love to ask. Is there a place for the hopeless sinner who would hurt one another just to save their own beliefs? Let's sing. One love, one love, one heart. Let's get together and feel alright. As it was in the beginning, one love, so it shall be in the end. One heart. Give thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will feel alright. Say it. Let's get together and feel alright. Let's sing another verse. People get ready, there's a train a-coming, picking up passengers from coast to coast. Faith is the key, open the doors and board them. There's room for every woman, child and man. Come on. One love, oh one love, one heart. Say, let's get together and be alright. Sing it now. One love, oh the one love, one heart. Give thanks and praise to the Lord, and I will be alright. Say it. Let's get together and be alright. I think it might have worked. Let's take a moment and offer one another a sign of peace, would you please? I'm going to ask y'all to sing another song with us. This time you can be seated, and it's a little less reggae than that last one, so I'd be doing it. And we wrote it. If I were to pray, yeah. If I were to pray in the breaking of the morning or the dying of the day, what would I say? What would I say? What would my heart speak if I were to pray? Verse 2. If I were to sing, if I were to sing, if my soul could give some honest offering, what would I bring? What would I bring? What are the simple truths my soul would want to sing? And if I do, will not the earth bend near? Will not the sacred life in all creation creation turn to land and will not my song throughout the cosmos ring and swim that crystal river that flows through everything? Mr. Cello. Sing some more. If I were to pray, if I were to pray, in the breaking of the morning or the dying of the day, what would I say? What would I say? What would my heart speak if I were to pray?
We've come to our Kairos time, which is the time between, which means all that has already happened, and we don't know what is to come. And what we have is this very moment that we are together. So let us reflect on the words of the song that the band just shared with us as we close our eyes, as we become comfortable, as we breathe in, knowing that we are not alone. And I offer this time of silence for you to reflect on in this time of Kairos and this time of prayer. What is it that you want to lift up? What is it that lies upon your heart and your mind in these moments? What are you joyful for? Where is the deep sadness? Where are the questions? And I just give you this moment of silence to speak those within yourself and lift them up. With all of our questions, with all the things we wonder about, with all the things that we are grateful for and offer great thanksgiving, we lift them in these moments. Amen.
Hear this morning from the Gospel according to Matthew. That same day, the Sadducees, who say there is no resurrection, came to him with a question. "Teacher," they said, "Moses told us that if a man dies without having children, his brother must marry the widow and raise up offspring for him. Now, there were 7 brothers among us. The first one married and died, and since he had no children, he left his wife to his brother. The same thing happened to the second and third brother, right on down to the 7th. Finally, The woman died. Now then, at the resurrection, whose wife will she be of the 7, since all of them were married to her? And Jesus replied, you are in error, because you do not know the Scriptures or the power of God. At the resurrection, people will neither marry nor be given in marriage. They will be like the angels in heaven. But about the resurrection of the dead, have you not read what God said to you? I am the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but of the living. When the crowds heard this, they were astonished at his teaching, hearing that Jesus had silenced the Sadducees. The Pharisees got together, one of them, an expert in the law, tested him with this question, Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and with all your mind. This is the first and the greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these 2 commandments.
I just had a quick thought. I'm going to use Brad's guitar because as I was thinking through what I want to share with you this morning, is the volume up? Oh, there it is, yeah. As I was thinking with you about this morning, I thought, well, you know what? This old Guy Clark song fits really nicely with this theme. Problem is, I didn't rehearse it, so I hope I can remember the words. But it really fits, I think, with the theme. And as we love to do here in 1111, this is all narrative. It's all a way of sort of seeing how things fit together, because the training here, the worship here is training ground for life out there, right? So it's all about putting the connections together. It's all about seeing the connections where God is always connected in life in all these simple, amazing, wonderful ways, all part of this great narrative that we're invited to participate in. So I invite you to try to figure out where this one fits in. But it seemed to when I was thinking about it. Well, he's 8 years old with a flour sack cape tied all around his neck. Standing up on top of the garage, he's figuring, what the heck? Screwed his courage up so tight, well, the whole thing came unwound. He got a running start, and bless his little heart, he went straight toward the ground. He's one of those who knows that life is just a leap of faith. Gotta hold your breath and spread your wings. Always trust your cape. Well, now he's all grown up with a flour sack cape tied all around his dreams. He's full of strength and vinegar, and he's just busting at the seams. Stuck his finger up into the air, said it's gonna be do or die. He wasn't afraid of nothing, and he was pretty sure he could fly. 'Cause he's one of those who knows that life is just a leap of faith. Gotta hold your breath and you spread your wings. Always trust your cape. He's one of those who knows that life is just a leap of faith. Gotta hold your breath and spread your wings. Always trust your cape. Well, now he's old and gray with that flour sack cape tied all around his head. Still jumping off of those garages, probably will be till he's dead. And all his neighbors just laughing at him, saying he's just acting like a kid. Well, he did not know that he could not fly, and so he did. 'Cause he's one of those who knows that life is just a leap of faith. Gotta hold your breath and spread your wings, always trust your cape. He's one of those who knows that life is just a leap of faith. You gotta hold your breath, spread your wings, don't forget the cape. A great Guy Clark song. I used to sing that song at a medical camp that I worked at for years when I was traveling as the storyteller and singer with kids in camps and stuff. And it was always this one song that I always thought, yeah, it's too esoteric. You know, kids aren't going to get it. It's too esoteric up there, you know. But it became one of the favorites for kids at some of the camps. And then I realized why when one of the counselors invited me to come see what was happening in one of the cabins, where in the second grade camp, they were daring each other to move the bunks further and further apart as they tied their pillowcases around their neck and leapt and playing a game they call cape flying, you know. And but yeah, so that was true. They didn't quite capture it, right? They weren't quite capturing it. And then I was shocked and humbled, as I often am, whenever I just simply open myself up to try to be of some service, to some connection to the world around me, which I do every now and then. And I was so moved because at these camps, they have these zip lines, right? You know, they do these ropes courses to help these kids. Some of these kids have hemophilia. A lot of the camps I worked with were oncology camps. These were kids with chronic or terminal cancer. And they had these ropes courses, a way of sort of building not just teamwork, which is important. You're connected to people. Never forget you're connected. That's a big part of your strength, right? But also your own inner strength as you trust this process and trust that you're not the victim of your life, but you're the participant, you're the hero, you're the guide in your own life. And as we would say, we're co-creators with God in this life. And so the zip line was always the last thing, right? So they come to the pole with a little platform on it. They're 40 feet, 50 feet up above the ground, where I've seen counselors, adults, sit there frozen stiff, almost to tears, saying, "Can I go back down the ladder? I'm not going to do this." And from 50, 60 feet up, they zip out across a big open field that drops, because usually these are higher up on the ground, and then down into a valley. And there maybe 100, 200 yards, they zip out there at, pretty good speed, just hanging from a cable. And the guy at the top's not really encouraging you when you say, "Have you guys been checking this thing? Do you know if this cable's going to hold?" And they go, "Yeah, we check it every couple of years." It's like, and you're looking at him, he's like 16, and you're going, "Shouldn't you have a license or certification for this kind of thing?" But these kids, though, I went up there one day, and I did it myself, and that's where I found it. Marked with their little knife that the guy up the top provides, it would say, "Trust your cape," and then it would have their name, Jimmy, and the date. And it would say, "Trust your cape," and it would have the name. And I thought, they do get it. They do get it. So this morning, we're talking about practicing resurrection is kind of my overall theme, but I'm calling it living an as-if life in a what-if world. This challenge of resurrection is that, as Jesus told his disciples around him, the kingdom of God is already in our midst. You're looking for it everywhere, but it's already present. And as we reflect back on his life, Jesus was already bringing the kingdom into reality. And so this idea of resurrection is as much a present experience as it is something mysterious beyond whatever we possibly can even begin to understand. How do we practice resurrection here and now? How does renewal happen here and now? How does new life happen here and now? How do we live out the gospel here and now? That's what I think it means to practice resurrection. And I love this image. You guys see this image on the bulletin. I finally found out where this image came from. There's a wonderful photographer. This is also what made me think of the cape. I looked at this morning and went, "Oh, the cape, yeah." So this image is from a guy named David Taggart, who's a world-famous photographer, and he was most known for his marketing kinds of photography. So he was big in the industry, fashion industry, modeling industry, and such. But if you go to his website now, you'll see that he kind of gave all that up. Of course, he'd been very successful, but he gave it up because he started realizing his photography was no longer about photography. It was about it was more about the object, right? It was more about creating the object into something. And he said he became less and less in touch with what was already happening and capturing that. So he gave up his career in marketing and in advertising and then just started taking pictures. And this was one of those pictures when somebody says, "How did you do that? How did you capture this guy walking past it?" And he said, "Well, I saw the butterfly and I said, something's going to happen here." And then I just started taking pictures anytime somebody walked by, and then I captured it. Got perfect timing, you know. But he said that's the way he started looking at life now. Something's going to happen here. Something's already happening, and I just need to see it. And so life teaches him, he says now, instead of him trying to control it. And that's kind of where I want to think about with you today. I want to think with you about this idea of resurrection. And I want to play with the metaphor, which we use a lot. In the church, we use it a lot. The butterfly as a symbol. I know that on Easter for the children's ministry, they released butterflies as a celebration. I want to think with you about resurrection as and the idea of cocoon, because I think it's such a great metaphor for how we live our lives in the world and what resurrection offers, what connecting with God, what following the way that Jesus taught, what that offers us in terms of practicing resurrection. The cocoon is a great image because the cocoon, obviously, you know, you're developing inside this shell, and then, of course, at the right time, the shell opens, the chrysalis, you know, it finally releases. The chrysalis is kind of like the hard inner shell. It finally opens, it cracks, and then you break free at the right time, and then you're resurrected or you're free. The problem with that is that the cocoon tends to be more where most of us stay, right? The cocoon tends to be a place where we end up liking to be. It's comfortable, it's familiar, we stay in habitual patterns, and so breaking out of the cocoon is difficult sometimes. You know what? Can you guys see that in the back? Because I bought these big fat markers, but I'm not sure if I'm using them right. But so I want to think with you what happens when we experience that. Carl Jung said this thing. Carl Jung said that he called it our unconscious, but basically the cocoon is that place where we feel most psychologically safe because we're surrounded with familiar folks, we're surrounded with familiar thinking, we're surrounded with traditions that are familiar, and it's difficult to break out of those patterns. Carl Jung once said that we have to learn to shed our skin like a snake in order to experience life more authentically. Now, I discovered this, you know this, you do this naturally, right? Our bodies naturally shed skin, right? Do you know how much we shed in a year? We shed about a pound and a half a day. No, I'm sorry, a pound and a half a year. Yeah, I'm sorry. Ooh, that was creepy. Yeah, never mind. Pound and a half a day would be awesome. You don't know that's what's happening, but it's freaky. So a pound and a half or 2 pounds a year. Whew. And so you don't hardly notice it, you know, but you sometimes when you're cleaning up, you know, and they say that there's a lot of that is the dust in the air, even in our houses. But there's this interesting thing that we do it automatically. We shed this because our cells have to renew. Our biology does it naturally. And my wife, when I was telling her about this, she says, my wife has a tattoo. Linda has a tattoo. I gave it away now. It's a bluebonnet tattoo on her right shoulder. And it's there because when Tim graduated from college, we said, if you graduate from college, she said, I'm going to get a tattoo, and you get a tattoo. And they chose bluebonnets because that was her favorite flower. But you'll have to ask her to show it to you around the corner somewhere because she's got to pull it down. She's like, so if I shed my skin, then I'm going to shed this tattoo. And I said, you know, it would take like 175 years to shed enough skin, to change enough skin to actually get rid of that tattoo. So it's there permanently. But the skin, this cocoon, is a normal part of our life. And we, you know, Richard Rohr says that when we're in the first half of spirituality, he says that we are in this area that we naturally would be. As young adults, as we grow up, we naturally sort of are oriented around our egos, around controlling things, around getting things we want, around having the family we want. around having the life we want. We're oriented around ourselves. And even the communities with which we affiliate. I mean, if you think back, the communities with which we affiliate are all about, again, how we orient ourselves towards life. It's very egocentric, which is not unusual, and it's not necessarily a bad thing, right? We need to have that sense of control. In that sense, we're still within the cocoon. We're still in this area of trying to grasp and hold on to what we have, or even get a little bit more. Richard Rohr calls that the first stage of spirituality or Christian faith. He says, because it's a place that's very self-focused, very dualistic in the sense that God is, even in some sense, even though we're here for God, we also have this orientation still that sees God as somewhat here for us too, and becomes a part of that kind of reality. God is still kind of out there, and we're still here. It's a very concrete kind of orientation. But it's also not where we're meant to stay. There's this wonderful Irish legend. A lot of you know that I travel to Ireland a lot, and we're taking a trip to Ireland from a group from here, as well as some other folks from the church, in a couple of months. And there's this wonderful Irish legend about the Silkie. Now, Silkie is part of Irish mythology. The Silkie is a seal person. If you go, there's a number of great movies out there that are all around this kind of legend. And the idea is that Silkies long deeply to be human. They long to be human, but they have to be found in order to change. But it's a delicate balance, because once they're found, if they usually, what they would do is they would usually come out during the early morning, and they would hide around a rock and sun on the rocks until the late evening, and they would be in their human form. They had shed the sealskin. But if you found them, it was kind of an ironic balance, because if they saw you, even though it's what they longed for, they would dodge back for their skin. So the trick was to catch them before they got back in the skin. And then you would free them, essentially. And they would marry. Sometimes a Silkie was a man, sometimes a Silkie's a woman. And there are all these stories in Ireland about these Silkies that married and had children. But none of them end positive. The Silkies ultimately, at some stage in their family life, whether they've raised their children or they're still raising their children, whether they've gone on in this one modern version of the story where they've gone on to get a job and are working and helping, something keeps calling them back to the skin, right? The comfort of that seal skin, the comfort of being under the water, the comfort of being hidden, of being protected. The real world, you're fragile, you're vulnerable, you're open. It's different, you're changed, and yet sometimes those old patterns call back, right? We all identify with that. Those old patterns, they call us back. And if the Silkie usually, in all the stories, the Silkie usually gets away sometime during the night, and if they hadn't thrown away the skin, then they find the skin. In most cases, the skin's been hidden. They've hidden themselves, and they find where they were hidden, and they're back in the ocean. And of course, the sad thing that's also true is that when we don't break free of our old patterns and live more authentically and more open, more transparent, more connected to the wider world, when we begin to do that, we begin to create healing opportunities. We begin to create moments of reconciliation, of connection with those in need. But what happens when we run before that can happen is we leave conflict in the wake of it. We leave destruction in the wake of it, because we didn't move fully into that new life. That's the challenge, I think, with a lot of Christians, too. A lot of Christians who come into Christianity, who come into the faith, they come into this idea that they're still in the cocoon. It's very concrete. It's very oriented around specific things. And they begin to make connections with other people and I'll say we, because I went through this as well as a former evangelical fundamentalist. I mean, we reach out, but we're maintaining this skin. We're holding on to it. We're not letting go of it. You know, this is still our defining coat, so to speak. And so we define everything by this. So if it starts to get challenged, then I run back to that skin. And I end up leaving all sorts of separation, and I never fully mature. So Richard Rohr calls that the first stage or the first half of spirituality. He says the second half of spirituality is that place where we finally shed that skin, where we finally shed and moved beyond. We've opened up. We've become a little more transparent. Little by little, we open up more and more to mystery. We open up more to not knowing than to having to know. You know, our sort of background slogan that we've had, of course, we have the one in our bulletin which says reconnecting your spirit without disconnecting your mind. But the other one that kind of banters around among a lot of our members is this idea, all your answers questioned. Instead of all your questions answered, it's all your answers questioned. It's this life that once we get to this place of being fully open, then we're more fully curious. We're more fully open to where mystery leads. We're more fully open to being connected in risky places. And if you look back at the text, isn't this what is happening? It's this challenge to live beyond our comfort. Now, psychologists call it this way. I'm going to put this up here. Psychologists say there's basically 8 sort of emotions that we struggle with, 8 points of security and insecurity that we struggle with. And they're kind of a dichotomy, so I'll just put them up here. Praise, and this is what Richard Rohr would say we also long for ourselves. Some of you might not know Richard Rohr. Richard Rohr is the Franciscan monk in New Mexico that runs the Center for Social Action and Contemplation, and has been a strong force in reconnecting sort of Christianity with a mystical tradition. Praise and then blame is one. And the second one is success and failure. I'm going to write these down, and I want you to think to yourself where you've experienced these in your life, because we all do. We've all experienced these in our life. We've been on one pole or the other. We've been on one side of the spectrum or the other. Fame and shame. And then the last one is pleasure and pain. And pleasure and pain, of course, is a very broad idea, right? I mean, pleasure is shopping on a Saturday all day, right? And sadly, pleasure is my new Mini Cooper, okay? I admit it. I confess. I mean, it's the material stuff, right? Pleasure is the material stuff, and pain is the loss. And pain can be lost in so many different ways. It can be loss of stuff that we cling to. It can be loss of life. It can be loss of love. It can be loss of job. But pain comes in a lot of ways. It can be chronic illness. What's amazing to me is these kids who certainly suffered extreme pain, you'd never know it. Why? It was always just an amazing sort of question for me. Why are you not scared? Why are you not feeling this pain? And it's because they've moved past all of this. They've moved towards being present to the moment, to being engaged with one another, and to finding that's where the magic was in spite of what they were going through. So the challenge of getting out of the cocoon is what we face here. And for the next 4 weeks, we're going to be playing around with some of this as we think about what it means to practice resurrection. I'm going to go ahead and tell you this story. I wondered about this. We'll see what happens if I tell this story. I think what happens to us when we find ourselves stuck in the cocoon, the Methodist Church went through this actually just this last week. We don't just deal with it as individuals in our beliefs, in our differences, in our anxieties, in our openness, and our willingness to be vulnerable. We don't just experience it there. We experience it as a church, right? Because the Methodist Church right now is deeply struggling over this issue of human sexuality. Right? I mean, the General Conference last time, 2016, we lost a number of our members in here who were from the LGBTQT community who had just felt like they love 1111. We're an inclusive community, but the Methodist Church is still not there yet. It's still struggling with its identity. 80% of young adults 30 years or older are actually completely supportive of same-sex marriages. 80%, almost, it's like 75 to 80%. The Pew Research Foundation found this out that much. I had a friend who told me recently, said, you know what, when you're dead, it's not going to be a problem anymore. It just won't be. You know, it's just if we survive long enough to wait for you to die. You know, the reality is the church is struggling, and that's not a fair thing to say there shouldn't be a struggle, because these cocoons get really thick. They get really thick, and they're very secure for us, you know, and so it's really challenging. But the Methodist Church met recently because we have a bishop who was appointed as bishop, consecrated as bishop in the Western jurisdiction over in Oregon, who is an avowed, married lesbian. And her district, her jurisdiction consecrated her. And that's how you get placed as a bishop. Your jurisdiction votes for the bishops and then consecrates the bishop. But someone in the South challenged it, which is the way often things happen in our church order. And so the Judicial Council met this last week, and it was a struggle. And our general conference, our church as a whole, has designated a committee, a commission to deal with this. And we're going to have a special called session in 2019 ahead of our general session, which will be 2020. So in 2019, we'll meet as a called conference to decide one way or the other. This commission on the way forward is trying to figure out, how do we as a church deal with this? We're a global church. We're not just a U.S. church or a European church. We're Africa, we're South America, we're Asia. We're a huge denomination. How do we deal with this and avoid schism and avoid just a complete collapse of our church? So it's challenging. There's no doubt that. But there's also this reality that part of that challenge is this willingness to be vulnerable with one another, to be open beyond what's comfortable. And that's where this cocoon, these traditions get deep. And they go way back, and it's hard to break through. Sometimes when we deal with this as an individual, we deal with it with denial, right? And some of the ways in which we deal with denial is we group with other people that think like us. We get involved in extreme ways. We go to the extreme, the opposite extreme, to not deal with it. It really is, we just bury ourselves deeper into the cocoon. I said it's a four-letter word because we all know basically what's at the heart of a lot of these dichotomies, right? What's at the heart? Fear. Our prime motivator. Fear is our favorite motivator. I mean, we're fear of being ashamed. We're fear of failure. We're fear of being blamed for something. We're afraid of pain. We're afraid of loss. We're afraid of that kind of pain. So fear is a huge, significant motivator. It ought not to be. In fact, when you look at our text, it's exactly what Jesus is confronting when the Sadducees come forward and they give him this ridiculous story about which wife is going to be his. And by the way, I'm reminded when my mom was dying. I think I told you when my mom was dying, she had such a sense of humor. And we were laughing, and she had a couple of months to go or so, and very cognizant. And she had married a man 4 years prior. The love of her life for 3 years. It was his second marriage, hers, after 45 years of being single. The love of her life. And she said, you know what, when I die, I'm going to see Brad. Brad's going to be there. And I smiled and I said, so is his other wife. What are you going to do about her? And my mother said, we will each have our own individual heavens. There is a way around this. But see, what Jesus says is it's stupid to begin with, right? The whole question is stupid. You're just trying to get me tangled up in all of this cocoon stuff. You're trying to trip me up so we'll all come running back to you, to your concrete ideas. But the reality is it's far more mysterious. It's not about death. God is a God of the living. It's about resurrection. It's about now. What happens in mystery happens in mystery. Who knows? But what happens now is where God is calling us to be rooted in life, to making a difference, to get out of that shell. And so he says, if you want to know what's important, what does he say? Oh my gosh, I mean, he says it's relational. He says it's relational. That's how you break out of the cocoon. You relate to one another. You love your neighbor as yourself. You got to love yourself. That's hard. You know, that's really hard. We got to get to that place first too. But then love your neighbor as yourself. Love God. We call God the ground of all being, as Paul refers to him in Acts. The one you worship, the God you speak of, we speak as the very ground of our being. Paul Tillich, the theologian in the 1950s, 60s, called the very ground of our being that mystery that we call God. To name God, God is already leaping towards idolatry because we start associating things with it. And how do we know? How can we even begin to know? God is in the very midst of our lives. And Jesus' whole life was tapping into that, right? It was all about tapping into that. Loving your neighbor as yourself. Loving those whom everybody else says is unclean. They don't belong in the church, in the synagogue. And Jesus said, yep, they're right there. That's who belongs there. Band, y'all can come on up, by the way. I forgot to tell you, come on up. So this idea of cocoon is the idea we're going to talk about, how we practice resurrection And I want to give you some fun ideas to play with that in the next 4 Sundays as we explore sort of each of these ideas of how we face success and failure. Next week we're going to deal with success and failure as the first one because it's the one I struggle with the most. And I'm reading a wonderful book that says, it's entitled Fail. No. Fail again. No. Fail better. So I want to talk about failure and success and suggest that once again, like everything else, we're not looking at it from a sacred way. We're looking at it basically from a very materialistic perspective. So, band, I better move this.
Our time was ever on the road, the riders of what we made. Oh, to hear of how it's in the give and take. But hear it this way, hear it this way. All right. The waters, our hearts and lovers in the band, you know that we love. We keep on breaking our backs, hoping that it gives enough. But what do you need? What do you need? Oh man, there's ladders to the sky, building up a high rise. Oh man, we won't last long, but we're giving it our best try. Don't you know you're alive? Don't you know you're alive? None of us saved the day the war had told you. Too mad, I'm in love with everybody on the city bus. I do the push and pull, hoping that it doesn't mean much. But what do you see? What do you see? And everybody on the street is singing like it's Sunday. So we keep inside and you look steady at me. And we don't know what left, but we feel it's coming back soon. So we're standing in the street, staring at a blood red moon. We are the tide. We're the tide. None of us saved the day the war they told you. It's over,
And then stick around. We sing our last song together as our blessing song. Maybe take somebody's hand if you don't mind, and we'll have a blessing. Hope to see you all again next Sunday. Let's pray. Holy One, as we leave this place, bless us in our coming and going. Bless us that we might be more mindful of each moment, that we might be more present to one another, even in ways that invite us to break out of our shells, out of our comfort zones, that we might begin to discover the Christ in one another, that we might discover your presence in all the places we find ourselves. Bless us as we leave this place. And we pray this in the name of the one in whom we live and move and have our being. Amen. So stick around. We'll sing this song real quick.
I invite you all. Here it is. Let the river run, let all the dreamers wake the nation. Come, the new Jerusalem. Woo! We, the great and small, stand on a star and blaze a trail of desire through the darkening dawn. Yeah, yeah. Hey, I want to invite everybody to talk Scottish accent for the rest of the day. In honor of our pianist, Lori Simmons, for the next 2 weeks will not be with us. She's going to be in Scotland, brothers and sisters. Woo-hoo! Scotland!
No, we should sing it Scottish.